It was just another ordinary day. The sun spilled golden light across the wooden floor. Birds chirped lazily outside the window. Tu Nha thought she had finally found peace. The past was behind her, buried, forgotten. Until the knock on the door. A man stood there, gaunt, eyes hollow, like a ghost dragged from the grave. "I never died," he said. His voice cracked, rough like dry leaves crushed underfoot. Her heart stopped. He was her husband, the man who disappeared all those years ago, the man she mourned, buried in her heart. And now he stood breathing, broken, alive. From that moment, nothing was the same. They say miracles happen. But what if that miracle is a curse? As secrets claw their way back to the surface, Tu Nha must face a past she never wanted to remember. What really happened to him? Why now? Why her? The same old road greeted him like it did every morning, lined with trees rustling in the breeze, birds chirping high above as if singing a gentle hymn for a peaceful day. Kiet didn't slow down. He never did. His steps were fast but steady, driven by the kind of quiet determination that only comes from sleepless nights and a life that never gave him anything for free. The workshop was worn, its tin roof rusted, the walls soaked in years of dust and stories. Inside, wooden boards were scattered like forgotten promises. But under Kiet's steady hands, those boards found their place. One by one, straightened, stacked, ready to become something real. His shirt clung to his back, sweat beading on his brow. But Kiet didn't complain. He never did. For him, every drop of sweat, every splinter in his hand, brought him closer to one simple dream. A solid roof, a warm home, and a better life for the aging mother waiting patiently in the countryside. But what no one saw coming, what Kiet couldn't possibly expect, was that this seemingly ordinary morning would set something in motion. She swept the front yard with slow, steady strokes. The same rhythm, the same faded ground baked under years of sun and silence. Morning after morning, nothing changed. Just dry leaves, dust, and a worn-out ache that settled on the porch like an old friend. But today, something was different. Carried on the breeze from far down the dirt road came the steady crunch of footsteps, soft, deliberate, growing closer. She froze. Her hands slipped from the broom handle. Her clouded eyes squinted down the lane, wide with disbelief. A tall, thin figure appeared, weathered backpack slung over one shoulder, shoes dragging just a little too heavy. Her heart stuttered. Her lips trembled. "Oh, Lord. Nam, is that you, my son?" The wind stopped. Her voice cracked in the stillness. Barefoot, not caring that her heels scraped the earth through broken sandals, she rushed to the gate. Shaking, breath-catching, she reached out. Her wrinkled hands trembled on his shoulders, afraid that if she touched too hard, he'd vanish. Like all the dreams she had of this moment that never came. Nam lowered his head, lips pressed tight. His hair fell into his face, hiding the tear sliding down his hollow cheek. "I'm sorry, Mom. I was wrong?" She broke down, no sound, just tears that wouldn't stop. Years ago, when rumors spread that Nam was caught smuggling and had run, presumed dead, she couldn't even leave her home. "Good riddance," they said. "He got what he deserved." And when the young pregnant wife came begging at her door, she turned her away. She didn't have the strength to carry another shame, not when she couldn't even protect her own child. Now, after all the silence, all the pain, mother and son stood in the yard as if time had folded in on itself. No more words, just the soft creak of the gate closing behind them, and the sound of Kiet's footsteps, heavy with memory, crossing the old kitchen floor. The kitchen hadn't changed. A dented pot, a cracked wooden cutting board, the same salt jar, and that fish sauce her mother used to say, "Homemade is always real." Kiet lit the stove. Smoke stung his eyes, but he didn't blink, just lowered his head, letting the tears fall quietly into the ash. He rinsed the rice with awkward hands like a child relearning home. Not with words, but with warmth. With a bubbling pot of rice and the apology only a mother's kitchen could ever understand. Beneath a relentless sun, far out in the endless fields, the heat poured down like molten fire from the sky. Rows of deep red chili peppers stretched across the cracked earth, radiating a dry, searing heat that felt like it could burn right through your skin. The air was thick, filled with a sharp, bitter scent of scorched dirt and chili oil so pungent it made your throat tighten and your eyes sting, whether from the spice or something else. Tu Nha bent low, hidden beneath a worn straw hat fraying at the edges. Sweat streamed down her hollow cheeks, dripping quietly onto the peppers below. Her sun-darkened hands moved quickly, fingers stained with earth, nails broken and packed with dirt. Her skin peeled where sharp stems had drawn blood. But she didn't stop. Each pepper she dropped into the old wicker basket was a silent vow. The basket, torn and patched with a red thread cut from her child's worn shirt, swung at her hip, held together just long enough to last another season. Her blouse clung to her back, streaked with dust, soaked in sweat. It once belonged to her mother-in-law, the same woman who once shouted across the yard, "Get out! I won't shelter the wife of a criminal!" A rare breeze stirred and a bird cried out from the brush, lonely and distant. Tu Nha looked up, squinting into the blazing horizon, toward a home that no longer stood, where promises died and where only silence remains. The fire crackled beneath the cast iron pot, steady and warm, like a heart slowly coming back to life after years spent cold and closed off. Nam crouched by the stove, hands trembling as he fed dry straw into the flames. His fingers were rough and cracked, scarred by wind, time, and the years he spent running. Now he held the straw gently, blowing softly as smoke curled upward, stinging his eyes. But the tears welling there weren't from the smoke. Not entirely. On a faded wooden shelf, he gathered a handful of humble ingredients. Morning glory greens still wet with dew, and 2 bitter gourds plucked hastily from the backyard. His chest tightened. He could hear his mother's voice again, soft, slow, like a lullaby of truth. Bitter gourd's hard to eat, but some things, once you taste them, stay with you forever. He sliced the gourd with a rusted knife. His hands were clumsy, unsure, like they were fumbling through a forgotten life. The thud of the knife echoed in the quiet kitchen, like a heartbeat, timid and shy. The rice pot bubbled over. Starchy water foamed at the edges, filling the room with a soft, sweet aroma. He skimmed it gently as if trying to wash the years off his own skin. In the pan, garlic sizzled, releasing the unmistakable scent of home. He tossed in the greens. They hissed and popped in the oil. Then the bitter gourd, still sharp, still stubborn, just like his past. No meat, no fish, just vegetables and silence. But every movement spoke louder than words. Every dish was an apology, served not for fullness, but for forgiveness. Outside, the sun softened. Light filtered through the leaves, falling across the doorway, where his mother waited, quiet and still. And maybe, just maybe, ready to forgive. Tu Nha walked the dirt path in silence, her steps steady, 2 baskets of ripe red chilies swaying at her sides. No one turned to look. A few neighbors offered polite greetings. She returned them with a faint smile, the kind worn by someone long used to not belonging. The baskets weren't heavy, but each pepper was grown by her own hands, picked at dawn when the mist still bit at her skin. Her sun-darkened fingers were stained with sap, her shoulders dipped slightly under the weight. But her eyes remained strong, quietly determined. She walked the 5 kilometers to the district market, never asking for a ride. never asking for anything. People saw her every day, but no one truly saw her. After her husband died, there were no screams, no curses, just silence. But today, those baskets spoke for her. Proof that she had survived, that she was still here, still standing. Nam returned on a storm-heavy afternoon, the sky churning with dark clouds, as if the heavens themselves were holding back something about to break. 3 years had passed since they'd declared him dead. No one believed he would come back. But now he remembered everything. With nothing but an old address and a restless heart, Nam walked the narrow roads, asking around at county stations, shops, and gas stations, looking for any trace of Tu Nha and the child they once dreamed of raising together. People stared at him like they'd seen a ghost. One woman screamed and bolted indoors. He didn't flinch. He wasn't here for their shock. He was here for her. 3 villages, dozens of voices. No answers. Until one young man sharing a bench at a roadside stand said quietly, "I've heard there's a woman. Lives alone with her little girl, down near the marsh edge. Quiet, kind. People like her?" The words struck like thunder splitting the sky, not out of jealousy but fear. If Tu Nha had vanished, there was a reason. And Nam knew, deep down, that reason was connected to the very thing that tore him out of her life. She didn't know he was coming back. She didn't know he was bringing the truth. A truth that could shatter everything. As the sun dipped behind the village treetops, its golden light brushed across small rooftops and narrow fields. In one of those yards, a woman bent quietly over a garden bed, her back tired, her hands steady, her eyes soft but burdened. She had no idea that the past was walking toward her, and with it, a storm no one was ready for.
Con đường quen thuộc dẫn anh tới công sở lập tôn cũ kỹ. Hai bên là hàng cây rì rào theo gió, tiếng chim líu lo như hát cùng buổi sáng yên bình. Anh không chậm trễ, không ngơi nghỉ, bước chân vội vã như chiếc chắn. Ánh mắt ánh lên sự quyết tâm, 2 phút mệt mỏi của bao đêm không chọn giấc. Những tấm ván cũ nằm ngổn ngang sau chuỗi ngày dài. Giờ đây, dưới những bàn tay cẩn thận và kiên nhẫn của Kiệt, tìm được sức may mắn. Nhưng chính cuộc đời anh nghèo khó nhưng không bao giờ buông xuôi. Mồ hôi dịu trên trán, áo ướt đẫm lưng, nhưng anh vẫn cặm cụi. Bởi với Kiệt, mỗi ngày làm việc là một bước gần hơn với cái mơ, một mái nhà vững chãi, một cuộc sống đầy đủ cho mẹ già chờ anh ở quê. Nhưng đâu ai biết buổi sáng kiểu như bình yên đấy lại là khởi đầu cho một ngày trên trái tim Kiệt tự dưng lên theo cách khác hẳn mọi ngày. Và vẫn được tay vết sân từng nhịp số kéo dài chậm rãi trên nền đất đã bạc màu nắng và gió. Mỗi sớm như thế chẳng có gì, chỉ có lá khô bụi ngồng nếu cũ kỹ phủ kín trên hiên nhà. Nhưng mà sáng nay giữa cái tĩnh lặng ấy có điều gì đó khác lạ. Từ xa xa gió thổi nhanh với bước chân đều những đất. Khựng lại quay người về sau đôi